How risk was hidden inside respectability. Respectability has always been powerful in London. It signals stability, restraint, and trustworthiness. And in finance, it became camouflage. Risk did not disappear as markets matured. It changed appearance. It learned how to dress convincingly. This matters today because danger rarely announces itself. It often arrives wrapped in credibility, endorsed by institutions that appear beyond question. Early risk was obvious. Speculation looked speculative. Leverage looked aggressive. But as markets professionalized, risk adopted better manners. It embedded itself in accepted practices, in products designed to look prudent. Structures marketed as conservative grew quietly complex. Balance sheets appeared solid. Returns looked modest. Volatility seemed controlled. This created comfort, and comfort reduced scrutiny. Respectability discouraged questions. If something looked safe, it was treated as safe. Institutions with long histories commanded automatic trust. Their involvement validated structure. Their presence reassured participants. Risk moved inward, away from visible behavior, into assumptions and correlations. The danger was no longer obvious leverage. It was alignment. Many institutions holding similar exposures under the same respectable labels. This uniformity felt responsible. Everyone followed best practice. Everyone used similar frameworks. But best practice can synchronize risk. What appeared diversified was often identical beneath the surface. Different instruments, same exposure. Respectability also softened accountability. Failures were framed as unforeseeable. Outcomes explained as anomalies. Risk was no longer owned. It was institutionalized. This transformation was subtle, gradual, rewarded, and because it looked responsible, it was rarely challenged. That is how risk learned to hide, not in secrecy, but in plain sight, inside the language of prudence. As risk blended into respectability, oversight relaxed, not officially, psychologically. When practices are widely accepted, they stop feeling risky. They become routine. Committees reviewed structures that look familiar. Regulators assessed frameworks that followed precedent. Investors trusted labels that implied caution. This created a feedback loop. The more respectable something appeared, the less deeply it was examined. Complexity increased under this protection. New layers were added quietly, each justified as refinement. Risk metrics reinforced the illusion. Volatility stayed low. Returns remained stable. Stress appeared hypothetical. But metrics only measured what they were designed to see. They did not capture alignment across institutions. They did not price shared assumptions. Respectability also constrained dissent. Questioning conservative structures felt unnecessary, sometimes inappropriate. Those who raised concerns sounded alarmist. After all, nothing looked wrong. Risk committees trusted precedent. Models trusted history. History trusted stability. This trust reshaped behavior. Institutions leaned into accepted norms. Innovation stayed within respectable boundaries. Ironically, this increased fragility, because similarity reduces adaptability. When everyone follows the same rulebook, no one explores alternatives. Risk became collective, not through conspiracy, through conformity. This is how exposure spreads quietly, not by reckless behavior, but by disciplined imitation. The system rewarded those who fit in, who spoke the right language, who framed risk as prudence. Over time, respectability stopped signaling caution. It signaled membership, and membership carries assumptions that others have already checked, that safeguards exist somewhere else. But safeguards only work when challenged. By the time questions returned, they were no longer about individual decisions. They were about structure itself. And structures are hardest to change when they look most responsible. The consequences appeared only under strain. When conditions shifted, respectable risk behaved like any other. It moved together. It failed together. Institutions that believed they were insulated discovered they were aligned, not by design, by habit. Losses emerged simultaneously across firms that thought they were diversified. The labels were different. The exposures were not. This was the hidden cost of conformity. Best practice had become shared vulnerability. As pressure increased, explanations faltered. Models that once reassured could not explain correlation because correlation had not been accidental. It had been encouraged. Regulators faced familiar names with unfamiliar problems. Nothing looked reckless, yet everything was fragile. Respectability slowed response. Intervention felt premature. After all, these were prudent institutions, using accepted frameworks. Delay magnified impact. As losses mounted, narratives shifted. What was once conservative became misunderstood. What was once safe became complex. This reframing revealed the truth. Risk had not been eliminated. It had been normalized. Normal risk is the hardest to confront. It lacks urgency. It resists blame. The system struggled to adapt because no single actor felt responsible. Everyone had followed the rules. And when rules produce fragility, changing them threatens legitimacy itself. Respectability had protected risk for too long. Now it exposed everyone to it. The shock was not financial alone. It was institutional, a loss of confidence in process. Markets began questioning what prudence meant, not in theory, but in practice, because caution that looks identical everywhere is not caution at all. It is concentration disguised as safety. And once that disguise fell, the system had to confront a difficult truth. Risk cannot be managed by appearance, only by difference. When the dust settled, respectability looked different. It was no longer defined by labels or tradition. It was defined by resilience. Institutions began questioning uniformity. Diversity of behavior gained value. Independent judgment was reintroduced cautiously. The lesson was subtle but lasting. Risk that looks respectable can be more dangerous than risk that looks obvious, because obvious risk invites limits. Hidden risk invites trust. London's markets did not abandon standards. They re-examined what standards rewarded. Prudence became less about compliance and more about challenge, less about fitting in and more about stress testing assumptions. This shift continues today. Slowly, unevenly, respectability remains powerful, but it is no longer unquestioned. The most trusted institutions are now those that explain risk clearly, even when explanation creates discomfort, because transparency breaks conformity, and conformity concentrates fragility. Modern finance still wears respectable clothing, but the lesson remains visible beneath it. Risk does not disappear when it looks responsible. It simply waits for the moment when responsibility is tested. Understanding this reframes trust itself, not as confidence in appearance, but as confidence in adaptability. And that distinction shapes how stability is built today. So what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again? How